Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande, Yatha Brahmande Tatha Pinde, seemed very relevant to me because, a lot of my exploration of this topic of data and AI was for the enterprise. Science and technology is on its own path. There is a path of wisdom. These seem like parallel paths.
Do you think this AI will make a lot more people conscious of this bridge?
There is a unity, or there is something consistent which is above that duality. Yeah, which is also how our philosophy goes, that there is Dvaita, but finally there's a Advaita. And they're not necessarily inconsistent with each other. Science and spirituality are not different. They are not different.
Where is the intelligence in artificial intelligence?
So just any advancement in technology can't bring all of this data together. So the way to do it is actually logical.
It's a little confusing. Data is input, and how do you translate input into value? Is there space for some regulatory or government intervention?
Line of questioning was brilliant. I think it forced me to also reflect a lot.
Namaste. What do the words artificial intelligence mean to you? What about data? What about digital? They are so much a part of our vocabulary. They have become so ubiquitous that we don't even realize when we are using them interchangeably, outlandishly, seductively, or just to appear cool. Smart citizens are using it to smoothen conversations. Smart companies are using it to increase their valuations, increase efficiencies. Smart countries are using it to get their strategic directions in order, their defense. And smart conversations are trying to decode exactly what is going on. Today, I have with me somebody who is standing in the middle of all these ideas of data, artificial intelligence, digital technology. He has been a manager, is an entrepreneur, and a wealth creator. He's the co-founder of Incedo, which is a $200 million company based out of US, which in turn is part of a $1.5 billion group. He's also written 2 books on the subject, Winning in the Digital Age in 2021 and Mastering the Data Paradox in 2024. Welcome to Observer Research Foundation, Mr. Nitin Seth.
Gautam, thank you so much. Thanks for that very nice introduction.
I'm tempted to begin with artificial intelligence and data and the manner and your passion and your work, etc. But I think in the Indian tradition, I will begin with a quote from your book. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the macrocosm, so is the microcosm, which in turn is based out of a verse from the Yajurveda, Yatha Pinde, Tatha Brahmande. As is the universe, as is the individual, so is the universe. As is the universe, so is the individual. This is a deep philosophy of consciousness. How does it apply to artificial intelligence?
It applies very deeply, Gautam. It applies very deeply. And, while on one hand, my work and passion is a lot around digital data and AI, these three intersecting and powerful forces, but equally, a lot of my thinking is also driven by our Indian knowledge. And I actually find them to be completely consistent, and that's why I'm a very I'm a student of science. I did my engineering MBA, worked in consulting firm for a long time, so I've been trained in the Western method. But I've always found that the Indian knowledge systems are have a certain logic and have a certain depth, which helps kind of interpret many issues that we are facing in the world of business and technology, which we are not yet fully interpreted. But our wisdom, our texts, have kind of when you reflect on them, you can see great parallels. Now let's talk about this. So the way I have applied, so there are two things. So first, the way, the reason this concept of Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande, Yatha Brahmande Tatha Pinde, seemed very relevant to me because, a lot of my exploration of this topic of data and AI was for the enterprise. But I very strongly felt that this was a topic and the issues and the opportunities were not just for the enterprise, were for the individual at a certain level, and also at the level of societies and nations. And it kind of transcends. Yeah. And this very famous quote from the Yajurveda to me seemed like a very good way of how you make the translation.
So, how do you bridge this? This is high consciousness. This is high technology. Where is the bridge?
The bridge, I think, is the way I see it is that the concepts from consciousness or the Indian wisdom, I think that's where the concepts come from. And I think the world of technology and AI, that's where the method comes from. Yeah. So let me kind of take it to another level and kind of, you talked about AI. So the way, you know, AI is evolving, it is at, I see it at three levels. Yeah. There is, the data of the world. Yeah. Which is, and which is being captured through generative AI. On top of that, there is more what I call enterprise data or more narrower data, which is where traditional AI operates. And at the top, you have individual data, and you have, what I call hyper personalization. Yeah, there are these three levels, at which AI is happening, and it's about connecting the three. And you think about the Yoga Sutras. I'm now from Yajurveda. I'll jump to Yoga Sutras. Like all Indian philosophy starts with a singular question: Who am I? Yeah, that's the starting point for every Indian kind of discussion. And there are different constructs of it, but the way Yoga Sutra does it, there are kind of three levels. There is buddhi, which is the universal consciousness. There is the aham, which is kind of a more meta form, and there is manas, which is the individual, what's often in psychology called the small mind. Now we know both from what Yoga Sutras say and also what modern psychology says, that you are at the highest level of performance when you connect the three levels. Yeah. When Roger Federer is playing beautiful tennis, he's not operating just from the small mind. He's able to tap into a universal consciousness. And that is exactly what is happening now. The way the data of the world and AI is evolving is exactly that. Is exactly that. Yeah. That those three levels are emerging. Why generative AI is so explosive and so transformative is that for the first time, perhaps, in human history, we are able to tap onto the data of the world, or you can say the universal consciousness, in a structured fashion. Yeah. Now, the way it links also is that if we knew this is something we are discovering in the world of technology, and we are kind of connecting, and I may say that not many people have made that connection very formally. Okay. But if and what is there in Yoga Sutra has always been there, has been there for a few thousand years. If we had taken those constructs more seriously, if there was more of a conversation about it, I think it would certainly aid the process of science and technology. Yeah. Science and technology is on its own path. There is a path of wisdom. These seems like parallel paths, but as somebody who has some small understanding of both, I actually feel that if this the our wisdom, the concepts are actually more advanced. They are deeper. And if there are enough people who are understanding them, they can, actually, science and technology will be able to leapfrog.
So, there is a lot of discussion about uh, science and spirituality and how they are getting closer to each other, or are two ends of the same coin, and so on. Um, but generally, what I find is that both are trying to fit into one another, as in, here is the spiritual path, and this is the science, and look, this is so intuitive. Or this is the science, and this is the consciousness part or spiritual path, and look, hey, it's so scientific, while actually the two are on their own. And okay, so how do I frame this? The two are on their own, but they are one.
Yeah.
They are rooted in one, and that one is the man,
Yes.
the human creating science, and the human engaging in uh, spiritual actions, consciously or unconsciously. Do you think this AI will make a lot more people conscious of this bridge? Or you think this will also go on like it has in the past? We talk about gravity, we talk about Pythagoras theorem, and so on. This will also continue as. Do you think there's this whole conversation about the meeting of West and East, or the meeting of science and spirituality, could converge and accelerate in the AI age?
I think it's a very interesting question, Gautam. I don't know. I don't know. Not naturally, I think. Yeah, though with every advancement of science, whether it is AI or it's gene research or it's research into the cosmos, I think science is getting closer to spirituality. Yeah, is getting closer to spirituality. Now, just kind of kind of a comment on something you said upfront, that science and spirituality, it's an apparent duality. It's an apparent duality. It's kind of two different methods. Um, but finally, they are trying to answer the same question. Both science and spirituality is a is an inquiry into the unknown. Their methods are different. Science is based on the facts that are outside, and spirituality is a journey within. Yeah, they are very different methods, and that's the root of Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande. That was a method for our seekers thousands of years back. They understood phenomena not just through external experimentation, but through deep internal reflection. That's where it comes from. Okay. And I think that method has been lost. That method has been lost. And I actually find it very, very consistent. Yeah, because as we know that any apparent duality, there is a unity or there is something consistent which is above that duality. Yeah, which is also how our philosophy goes, that there is Dvaita, but finally there's a Advaita, and they're not necessarily inconsistent with each other. Yeah. So for me, science and spirituality are not different. They are not different. Yeah. They're different methods, but there's a lot. They are very complementary. They are the yin and the yang. Again, in our traditions, the science and spirituality were not different. Yeah, our rishis were
That's right.
were
That's
both
that's
were
right.
both somewhere over a period of time. Some a differentiation happened, and that's what we are still living with. And I would, if I may venture in that, that far, that I think a lot of our Western knowledge systems are actually have a smaller construct. They have a smaller construct. With those smaller and more limited constructs, we are trying to interpret a much deeper construct like Indian spiritual wisdom and knowledge. How will you ever do that? You can never do that. And that's kind of part of the problem. And that's why these things are put into boxes. For me, these are, I just find it very natural that these are consistent. I sense from your line of questioning that you find as well.
I
Because,
do. I think all that we do are actually a projection of what is within, and all that happens outside is a reflection of what lies within. So I think that bridge is an individual journey. I just asked the question because you placed it in the context of AI. Let's move forward. So, over the past few decades, we've had a new religion every 15 years: globalization, democracy, peace, technology, all unifying forces, etc. And so, is today artificial intelligence the new religion? And I use the word religion not in context of spirituality, but in terms of a belief system that this will change the world. I will change the world. I will get up one day, one small person, young man, sitting in a garage, and I will change the world simply because I will use data, etc. Just the way globalization changed the world, just the way democracy changed the world, just the way United Nations attempted to change the world and is now failing, but so on. So, is AI the new religion?
you know, AI is a extraordinary big force for humanity. Okay. Now, as human civilization, we have probably had 200 odd what are called general innovations. AI is the latest in that. And when I say general innovations, I'm talking about fire, I'm talking about wheel. it is that order of magnitude. I would hesitate to use the word religion. I would not use it actually. I think that would be, to my mind, it doesn't seem to fit for me, because religion suggests a certain orthodoxy, in a certain, framework, or a kind of a fixed construct, which is not what AI is about. But AI, the way it is evolving, and especially the three layers that we just talked about, the macro, the enterprise, and the individual, each one of them evolving and now connecting with each other, is an extraordinary force, Gautam, is an extraordinary force. Because so far, a lot of the technology advancements that we have seen have been about making it easier for the human being. It was largely about taking tasks which we didn't want to do. Yeah. And how do we do it in a kind of easier fashion? Now this technology is different. It is self-learning. Okay, it is self-learning. On top of that, it actually does better some of the very innate human things.
Can I just
Hmm,
hold you there?
hmm.
When I examine the word artificial intelligence, the word intelligence, somehow I find a big dissonance. Uh, when I study it a little deeper, I find that actually it's not intelligence. It is what has been fed into the system through a series of data analysis, a quicker analysis, no doubt. You can do stuff that you did physically in the 1970s or 80s, and through Excel in the 90s and the 2000s. You can do that in one quick question, and if you frame it right, and you will get your answer. So, quick computing, I can understand. Intelligence is something which I'm unable to comprehend. I mean, finally, it's a person like you or I who are sitting in some place and devising some software that will decide that such and such person likes to see, likes Honolulu, and we will start feeding him Honolulu hotels and Honolulu tourist guides and air tickets and what to do in Honolulu, etc., beaches and so on. But frankly, that is a function of the data that is being analyzed very fast. Where is the intelligence in artificial intelligence?
See, it probably gets us to the question: what do we exactly mean by intelligence, Gautam? Yeah, because at the end of the day, even what do we mean by human intelligence? Yeah, we as human beings are different from other species in two ways. First is that our learning ability is extraordinary. Yeah, compared to other species. Other species also have it, but ours is extraordinary. The second is that we are able to build on facts to create. you know that it's not just about the reality of something. We are able to visualize and create something. Yeah, that's how we are really, really different from other species. That's how money works. Money is not based on a reality, it's based on a concept. Now with this technology, we are doing that is happening. Okay, you're absolutely right, Gautam, that the starting point of that is some data. End of the day, AI is based on three things. It's based on algorithms, it's based on data, and it's based on compute. Yeah. So, and the algorithms and the data, there is a human input into that. So absolutely, we are still kind of ahead of AI in that sense. Yeah. But what's happening is that you combine the compute, the self-learning capability of this technology is extraordinary, Gautam. It's not just chess, but you would have.
Can you expand that? What do you mean by self-learning? And that is where intelligence, I presume, comes from. What does a software, what does a system learn that has not already been fitted into it by, say, you,
Yes. So see
or
see that,
put into certain equations by the analysts?
Gautam, the starting point is probably an equation, and which is kind of what historically we have called analytics or data science or decision science. That there is a some logic, yeah, which a human being coded. Yeah. Now there is a data or an input. You go through that logic and you have an output. Yeah. Now that let's say it is um, you know showing you on Netflix a recommended list. Yeah, that's the output at a very simple level. Now, you may click on it, suggesting that you like it, or you may completely ignore it. That no, this was not the right, it was not the right input for you, isn't it? Now, the self-correcting part is that the the machine is seeing that, is learning that okay, I had a logic. Based on that logic, I suggested Sholay and Amar Akbar Anthony and Muqaddar Ka Sikandar to Gautam. Yeah. But actually, he clicked on Sholay and then he clicked on Top Gun. Okay. He did not click on this. Yeah. So this means that my logic was not correct. Yeah. And therefore it starts to make adjustment in the logic itself. It starts to change the
Who who tells it to use what kind of logic? Now, let's say from Sholay, I don't see Amar Akbar Anthony, but I see Top Gun. Now, there is something in the software that has been put by me or
the
you,
initial input is put by you.
and then it does it on its own.
Yes. It is because it has the compute, there is so much compute capability
Is it
available.
keywords based, for instance, action, violence, Amitabh Bachchan, or some
It is
Yash Chopra?
based on the actual reality of what you have seen. Yeah. Yes, there is a Top Gun will fit into some category. Yeah, that whatever action movie,
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, 1990s, blah blah blah. There will be some descriptors of that. Yeah. So and there will be some model for Gautam. Yeah. They will have a persona for Gautam. Yeah, behind it. And it's incredible that if you actually were to, extract out from Netflix that the picture they have for Gautam, it will be incredible actually. It will be highly detailed and much deeper than what you can ever visualize. Yeah. Now that formula for Gautam, it is kind of, that is self-learning. No individual is doing that. Yeah. And because you have such infinite compute capacity now available, there are hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of iterations that are being run. Yeah, automatically. That is where the self-learning comes from, that it will go through so many, it will keep on, it's what's called A/B testing. Yeah. So there is A/B testing.
There is something like a mind of this technology. It has a mind rather than just algorithms. Is that what you're saying?
See, that's where, when
Can we call it a mind?
I would hesitate to do that, because
Then why are you calling it intelligent? See, I'm lost in this circle because I haven't got a clear answer to the vocabulary of this phenomena. That is incredible phenomena, by the way, incredible. But
don't
is
get
it
lost
is it
in the
is it
vocabulary.
intelligence?
Don't get lost in the vocabulary. I think it will be you will miss the point. You'll miss the substance of it. I think, because don't get lost in the form of it. Focus on the substance of it. Focus on the application of it.
That's easy. That's easy. That I can see. But anyway, let's move on.
Mm.
You know, Sri Aurobindo says all life is yoga.
Mhm.
Huh? Nitin Seth says life is data and data is life. What do you mean by that? Over the past millennium, at least in the past 50 years, so many technologies have come and they have gone. And they've done their work.
Yeah.
They have taken humanity forward. We have seen progress, a better standard of living, less hunger, less wars, by the way,
Yeah.
despite all that we are seeing
Yeah.
today. So what is this thing about that life is data and data is life?
Yeah. When I went through the process of writing my book, Mastering the Data Paradox, and I spent 3 years on it, as I came to the end, what I realized, I didn't start with that realization, but towards the end, I had this realization that the many principles that I was able to abstract about data and the principles of life were actually very similar. Yeah, they were very similar. So to me, it was a very beautiful realization. We talked about the microcosm, macrocosm, or the yatha pinde tatha brahmande, which is a principle of life. and I saw that very relevant, about data. The entire book is, titled, Paradox. Interestingly, if I may share with you that initially I was the what I was researching, and what really, um, uh, you know, intrigues me a lot is this whole notion of duality. And in the book I was writing, and I'm still going to write, that is Mastering Duality, the most important leadership skill for the 21st century. That's the book I started to write. Okay. And then I said, okay, it's too big. And maybe the duality that I focus on immediately is one around data. Yeah. And as I progressed through this journey and just around data, I was able to see like 20 paradoxes. Yeah, and that's something which just further reinforced for me that the meta level, the paradox of the duality I saw in life. For example, we just discussed science and spirituality, an apparent paradox or apparent duality. Yeah, that data abounds with that. Yeah, so that's where I'm coming from. That the principles of data that I could abstract.
Maybe it's the journey of an explorer,
Yes,
that you through your entrepreneurship or through your technology platforms or whatever it is that you do, you go, and this could happen to anybody in any field, a doctor, a pilot, or anybody, that you go so deep that suddenly it becomes life itself. You become data. Like when I, for instance, write a book, uh, you know, I start with hesitation. I need to read this, I need to read that, and put my thoughts together, articulate them, etc. But gradually, as I stare at the data on the screen, I use a lot. I stare at a lot of data, perhaps not as much as your computing people, but I stare at a lot of data, and I find myself, the more I stare, I become the data.
which is the
You know,
life is yoga, no?
that's right.
Which is
And
Aurobindo's statement.
exactly, and which is what you are saying. I just wanted to see, is that what you mean? Like,
Yes,
and for you, all life is data. For a doctor, all life is cells.
yes.
For somebody else, all life is engineering, or mechanization, etc. So I think it's probably that when you say all life is data, it's one small aspect of a universality that actually, which is reaching the essence of the truth of whatever that you're doing. And truth, as they say in the Indian tradition, you can reach through millions of
Yes,
ways, and
yes.
you find your truth through
True.
data for
Yes.
now.
Yes, for now.
Tomorrow, you could set up an ashram and find your truth in some other way, for instance. But
Yeah,
for now, in the middle of all this activity, money, deals, venture funding, valuations, etc., you are finding data to be your some sort of a life itself. I mean, that's what I wanted to.
that is definitely one way of thinking about it. And you're right, that a lot of my life has been about data. Yeah. And
How long has this data life been?
I think right last 25, 30 years,
Okay, okay.
look, engineer, MBA, started my career as a consultant in McKinsey.
So you've
So
been a data guy all
yeah,
through.
and then I set up analytics in McKinsey as a global service line. Then I was at Fidelity, which is the biggest, active money manager in the world, which was all about data. Then I went to Flipkart. I was the chief operating officer, and e-commerce is the most data-driven business possible. And then then I set up Incedo, and we are, working with the biggest companies in the world largely on data. So it's been kind of a strange kind of serendipity that a lot of my journey has been in different aspects of data. So yes, and I see that different aspects of life, you see data. Yeah. But there is also this thing, maybe it goes back to the Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande about the extrapolation, or the interpolation, that a lot of the principles that I saw in data were also principles of life.
Let me take that one step forward. To win in the AI age, you have to master data. Now, you're not alone in this. Almost every, and that's why I call it a religion. That any person who enters this AI field becomes a believer, almost a fundamentalist, in a positive way. I'm not saying in a negative way. And today, you can't have any discussion around without data or artificial intelligence. Anywhere you go, foreign affairs, economic policy, infrastructure, anywhere you go, data is getting inside, from consumers to producers to regulators, anywhere you go, uh, data, 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 more data. Anyway, and this kind, using that data and the technology of AI is getting to be more disruptive than anything else we have seen thus far. And we've always felt that there is a new disruptor in town, technology, or uh, I remember that Y2K moment was there in 90s, in 2000, sorry, in 2000. And everything was disrupted. And this is the new disruptor. Now, the way we learn, the way we work, the way we have our relationships, the way we entertain ourselves, everything is um moving towards data. And to win in the AI age, you have to master this data. Uh, how do you master data? Do you sit down and learn Python, or what? How do you? uh, what is the meaning of mastering data?
Yeah. It's that, like mastery of any topic, Gautam, it's, there are different levels to it, right? You're kind of working towards a karate belt. There are many levels of it. Yeah. So the first level, I think, is just to kind of, take out the fear of data.
You talk about that also.
Yeah, because I think a lot of technology, deliberately maybe it's been created as a black box so that people don't understand it. They maybe either fear it, and then they end up buying it, because of FOMO. That's how a lot of
The
this.
ancient principle, na? Fear or greed,
Yeah,
greed
fear.
and fear.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there is the reason I have written this book and also my previous book is because I believe that people need to just get comfortable with this topic.
So, what about a person like me who has nothing to do with data other than using it? How do
Mm.
I data? How do I? If I have to win, you have to. How do I master data?
No, your work is all about data. Look where we are sitting. I see data all around me. I presume that some fraction of these books you would have read, right? And this is a think tank. Where end of the day for a think tank, it's about ideas, but those ideas have to be substantiated with data and research. So look, just the first step is to kind of become aware that you have to, data as a friend. Okay, let me give you a very small example. Yeah, practical example. So I'm diabetic. Yeah. And my father-in-law, who's 77, 78, is also diabetic. Yeah. Last couple of years, I've been using a continuous glucose meter, right? Which gives a continuous glucose reading, and very helpful. I found it to be very helpful. I'm like a data person, so for me it was the most natural thing to do. I probably started to interpret it a lot more than my doctor does. So that's another story. Now, but my father-in-law, for him, he was he refused to kind of use anything, maybe a prick a day, even that would be a big thing. And he would say, no, I'm not having any sugar, I'm not having any sweets, I don't know how my sugar is high. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and and then we forced him to use this, a libre, a continuous glucose meter, and lo behold, it became all very transparent. It became very transparent that, okay, here is your reading pattern, it's not static, it goes up and down. And hey, by the way, it went up. What happened? You said you were not having anything, but you went to, he has a showroom, you went there, you ate something, and it went up. Yeah. I'm just giving you a very small and practical example. That's the first step. From this, I am relying on my gut. This gut in itself is a very, very complex beast and very unreliable. Very unreliable. Yeah. You become comfortable with data. Yeah. You start to use, build the ability to use data. Yeah. With data, you may not win. Yeah. But at least you will avoid mistakes. You'll avoid mistakes. Yeah. So that's kind of the first step, which is kind of I become comfortable. There's a second step, which I learn how to use it. I understand a little bit of what does data analysis mean and blah blah blah. There is maybe a third step, which is not necessary for everybody. Yeah, which is that I learn how to process data. I learn how to deal with large volume of data. That is not for everybody. Yeah. There is a fourth step which I think is we will find interesting, and which is that how do you transcend just data? Yeah. And I know you have read my book, so I talk about wisdom. Yeah. In the enterprise context, it's very interesting that, look, there's an explosion of data. Interestingly, majority of that data is now open source, is available outside the enterprise, is available freely. Yeah. So therefore is a question that, as an enterprise, how do you win? Yeah. And I propose the concept of proprietary data, that those are insights or some data that only you as an enterprise have. Yeah. And then from an individual perspective, I also talk about data driven decision making. So I talk about that. It's very important to have the ability to make data driven decisions. But then I also say that to kind of go beyond it is wisdom. And wisdom to me is, and I differentiate that from gut. Yeah, wisdom is about patterns, is about the data or the experiences that you're having. Experiences are also data. Yeah, that you are kind of reflecting on them, and you are able to process them, and so it comes up with, there is a deeper view on topics which is there. Yeah. So yeah, so at least those are the 4 or 5 levels that, when we say mastering data, that would be a journey.
Interesting. Yes, very interesting. But there could be some people who are outside this whole uh, technology, gadgets, um, data. I mean, outside in the sense that, although that's very difficult now that you mention it, even the poorest person in
Is
India
using Paytm now.
is using Paytm, is getting money
Yeah.
directly into his Jandhan account through
Yeah.
the telephone, through a
Yeah.
mobile, through that jam technology. So that data is there, and he is using data very well. In the sense, earlier you would get 15
Mm.
paise for every rupee. Now the entire rupee is getting
Mm.
credited into his account. So yeah, I think perhaps I need to think a little more about this
And
data.
see, and look, and you have to make it your friend. Yeah. If you say, if you are a Luddite, ki, nahi, nahi, I am away from this technology, tough luck then.
Hmm.
And look, data, also point I make a lot is that data is not just about technology. Yeah. In fact, that is also a problem with data. That often, the way to think about data is that, oh, let me put a lot of technology together, let me get all of this, let me invest, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in kind of building this technology infrastructure which will bring all data together, and then I will be able to come up with some great insights. No, that's the root of the problem we are facing with data, because data is exploding at this, it's like this viral thing, Gautam, that which is exploding at a rate which no technology infrastructure can keep up with. 90% of the data of the world has happened over the last 2 to 3 years.
Oh,
Just let that sink in. And that, if you look at over the last 20 to 25 years, data has grown by 100 to 150,000 times. Population has grown from 1 to 1.3x. You would know that very well. Global GDP has gone from 1 to 3x. Data has grown 100 to 150,000 times. That's the explosion that has happened. Okay, this is the famous Malthusian equation that, that population, that means, production grows in arithmetic kind of, in way, and population grows on a geometric way. Here it is way more exponential. So just any advancement in technology can't bring all of this data together. So the way to do it is actually logical. So one of the key arguments I make about this paradox, the paradox really that I talk about is water, water everywhere, yet not a drop to drink.
data, data everywhere.
But no insight, no action. Nikla kya? Yeah. And the way to break the paradox is not technology. That's the problem that is happening. Technology is creating a problem.
What is the way to break it?
The way to break it is a better balance between what I call the physical and the logical. Yeah. Between technology and focus on, hey, what is the problem I'm looking to solve? I'm a bank. To drive growth, a key thing for me is maybe to drive more cross sell between my different, for my customers. To drive those cross sell, if I say, okay, I need to understand my customer really well, which is the, again, Gotham Netflix example of showing Sholay and Top Gun and so on. Yeah. I have, for a bank also the same thing, isn't it? What to show Gotham. I want to build a full understanding of Gotham. It suddenly starts to become a very complex problem. The way typically bank would do is, okay, let me get all first data together into a single source of truth across different product lines which are there. Let me build something called a customer 360-degree view of Gotham. I'll get all of his data, including all of his browsing data together. Array, that's almost like an impossible thing. That is what companies are doing. That is why they're pumping in so many hundreds of millions of dollars and they're not getting results. So that's what I'm saying. Okay, it needs a balance of saying, okay, for this cross sell, and if I want to sell him more credit cards, yeah, what are likely to be the what's my 10 or 15 or 20 um, data points which may help me inform that decision. Let me at least first get that together as opposed to trying to get everything. Yeah. So one of the key principles that I abstract, which is also principle of data and principle of life, is less is more. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to come to that.
Which is in a world which is so inundated with data, how do you narrowcast it? The way to make sense of big data is also by what I submit by narrowing it down.
We'll expand on this point later. So actually, I began this conversation in my mind with just three sets of questions. Now we've gone all over the place. So I'll now come to my first set of real questions. Three themes.
Achha, this was not real so far.
This was data. um, how can countries,
Hmm.
as guardians of citizens, as ensuring that citizens don't get exploited, but all the time at the same time trying to ensure that technologically or innovationally we don't lag behind, how can countries negotiate this AI age, data age? How can they, let's say for instance, how can countries, how can sovereigns regulate AI? This is the new thing which is being discussed. There is the China way, there is the American way, there is an EU way. EU has come out with regulations even before their innovation has begun. So I don't think EU is going anywhere. Nonetheless, the regulations are there. And India is at that point when it is going to be drafting these regulations. Right now, there's not too much AI, so we are all, sitting back. At some point, with some incident, something will break down. And suddenly we will be forced to start active regulation of AI in India. How do countries regulate and ensure the balance that you were talking about? The
Yeah.
balance between regulation and innovation,
Yeah.
the balance between control and freedom. How will that, how can countries negotiate this landscape of artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Because by the time you regulate one thing, AI has created something more. Some
Yeah. Yeah.
innovator has done something more. How do you? So
Or a
China
hacker.
has a solid model.
No, it's a control system.
You cannot do anything out there. But America has an interesting model where they are talking about regulation, but at the same time allowing the flowering of ideas, some good, some bad, to happen, and those are getting embedded into their governance structures and the way they look at their other defense systems, space, and so on. What should India be doing? How do you see this entire regulatory
It's a
landscape?
very, very, very big topic. Very big topic. And I actually, through my book, one of my objectives is to provoke, discussion on this topic. That's why I've also come here, because I hope through this, your platform, we will, at least begin some of those discussions. So look, as you said, there is a balance. There is a balance between kind of governance and growth. Yeah. Um, I think today the prism we are taking on this discussion debate in India is too much around governance, too much around regulation. Every nation's current situation and objectives are different. They're not the same. For us, AI is the biggest opportunity we could have had. Okay. This is like our time. Okay. We were talking about it that this is the fourth industrial revolution, digital data, AI coming together. Every industrial revolution has meant a change in world order. This is our time. We have to use this as an instrument of growth. Yeah. You just, gave me a copy of your book and you signed it by saying growth is good. And I think that's what I would play back to you, that at least for me, understanding this technology a little bit, and I think having a very strong desire that, okay, India leverages this well.
So let me rephrase it. What would be the framework for India to regulate AI? I'm not asking for specifics here, but what is the framework, and how do we get that balance? And ask this question because once you read that book, you will see 75 years of ridiculous, oh no, not sorry, 41 years till 1991 of ridiculous policies of controlling, and I still find that there is an aversion to entrepreneurs. And in fact, in my conscious memory, it's only recently that I'm seeing leadership talk positively about wealth creation, about wealth creators. Otherwise, they've been relegated into the Amrish Puris and Ranjits and Gulshan Grovers of Indian cinema, but the bad guys. ठीक है काम करा लो, but finally
Yeah.
just remember, we
Yeah.
are there. That my bab business. And if we are to enter, not only enter, actually right now even entry is difficult,
Yeah.
but if we are to enter, consolidate, and even lead, as you say, this is our time. I agree with it. It is our time. Then I think this whole regulatory structure of how ideas, how companies, how products are regulated needs to be questioned, not just in terms of that here is a regulatory paradigm for technology AI, and here is the other for the rest of you. How do you?
I'll make three big points.
Please,
I'll make
please.
three big points. First is, at least for me, the way we will win in this AI age is by unleashing a wave of entrepreneurs. Okay, that's the only way I think we will win. US model is the big tech model. It is not government, it is big tech. China model is a lot more government control driven. For us, it's neither of those. Okay. Our model will be the entrepreneurs, okay, who use the power of data and AI. And I would submit that data and AI is a very kind of democratized kind of technology. Okay. It is that technology is actually very easy to use. And it's not about building, it's about consuming the technology.
You mentioned, pardon me for interrupting, you have two more points,
Yeah.
but pardon me. But when you say that American model is big tech took its time to become big, right? So it began in the garages, right? So the model that you are talking about, India, where entrepreneurs, etc., will begin, and now maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 50 will succeed into becoming a big tech, could be the way forward for all. Second point on this is that how can a small entrepreneur engage with AI when the chip, the raw material is so expensive?
No. See, that's where I think we need to understand the whole stack, right? On the the base, you have the chip or the compute, right? Then you have the big tech, who are building the large language models or the foundational models. Yeah. I think at this point, neither is the game for us, to my mind. And those are the games, which are very capital intensive. Chip is very, that compute is very capital intensive, and the big tech is that 20 or 30-year game. We are not in that game, but there is, to actually use it, there is so much that is to be done on top of that. We talked about the three layers. There is the macro. You're talking about the macro, and then there is the more enterprise contextualizing of data, building more specific AI applications. Somewhere we talked about hyper personalization. Hyper personalization has to happen in each industry. For that, there's a lot of innovation around customer needs, customer problems, solutions that needs to happen. That's the game for us. Okay. So
that's where you say our entrepreneurs have a
so it is about
chance.
consuming technology, not building the technology. Okay. The underlying core technology.
Is this market big enough
Oh,
for us to become leaders of tomorrow?
Oh, it's humongous. The game has just begun. We talked about hyper personalization, how it is impacting your Netflix experience and Amazon shopping experience. Arey Baba, it's going to happen in every industry. It's just started now. It will happen across healthcare. It will happen in education. It will happen in everything. It will happen. It's that and see, everybody's trying to figure it out. Okay, everybody's trying to figure it out, and it is driven by that experimentation. Yeah. So that is what I strongly feel is the opportunity for us. You don't have to reinvent that wheel. Yeah, maybe there'll be some big industrialists in India who will try to compete with Taiwan in terms of chip manufacturing and so on and so forth. But for the majority of India, when I say unleash entrepreneurs, hundreds of thousands of millions of entrepreneurs, it is in consuming technology.
Okay.
So that's what I'm talking about. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is that, okay, how do you enable them? Instead of like, ja bacha, jaake lad. It's not, you need something more than that. And I think for that is the digital public infrastructure. We've already done a great thing. Aadhaar is such a opportunity for us. Yeah, because the stack is already built quite beautifully. We have a lot of data in there already. It's already being used very effectively to build a set of services, especially around UPI and payments. Now there's a next step. How do you start to enable a set of AI services? Yeah, which can then like phone pay or bharat pay use that stack to build payment businesses. Yeah, now you can start to think about so many businesses that can be built, and there is a common digital public infrastructure which is kind of like an enabler for entrepreneurs, right? So
Like ONDC, for instance.
yeah, as an example. So we keep on investing. We are already exporting digital, our stack, which is I think a great thing. But we should keep on investing in that. It is already a very, very good data stack. It on top of that data stack, you have to build a AI stack, a AI set of services, which are public services, which can be used by entrepreneurs. That's the second kind of key thing that has to be done. Third key thing which has to be done, which is where you started, but I would say that's the third, is driving standards around both data privacy and data security. The two are slightly different concepts. Okay, data privacy more in the context of individual data. Yeah. Now today, when you go onto a site, you say I agree
Hmm.
to something.
Hmm.
But Baba, you have never read that,
That's right.
and you have no ability to understand it.
That's right.
Yeah, the choice should not be given to the individual. It's a farcical choice. There have to be standards around data privacy, and there needs to be global standards around data privacy, and India should, you know, drive that forcefully. Okay, drive that forcefully. That if you are doing business, like today for automobiles, there are some at least basic level of emission standards. Now, if you're in EU versus India versus US, they may vary somewhat, but at least basic hai, right? Similarly, there needs to be a set of data privacy standards that may be level 1, 2, 3. Yeah, but at least level 1 needs to be there, and there is need for a much bigger global debate about it, which is to be driven, which has not happened at the right level, which is something for India to drive. Yeah. The other aspect is security. Security comes more in the in the context of enterprises. Yeah, that the data as a company I'm working with, I'm collecting so much data now on behalf of my customers. Is that data secure? Privacy is how I'm using that data. Yeah, securities, is that data secure? And now what is happening in the world of business is that businesses are interconnected. I may be Citibank, and as Citibank, I may have, or JP Morgan or whoever, I may have the best data security in the world. But at the same time, I am working with hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of other entities. Yeah, they are connecting into my system in some fashion. Yeah. Now, if there is a vulnerability somewhere in their system, it is like there is a risk of that getting access.
And that's where regulation needs to fix.
That's where again regulation needs to be there. Again, like privacy, we said there is at least a minimum standard. Even in security, it's not just good enough for me to be very secure. My entire ecosystem, because businesses now increasing, the concept of a business and company is also changing. Now it's like a umbra penumbra. There is something which is within my gift, but there is a broader ecosystem I'm working with. I'm only as strong as the weakest link in the entire chain. Yeah, and that's where the security standards have to be driven. So these are two aspects: privacy and security. Okay, which where global standards are needed. That is what India should focus a lot on. But I think, to me, it's very important, but it's number three. Is number three. Number one is, how do you unleash entrepreneurs? Okay. Number two is that, the key enabler for that growth is your digital
Digital
public infrastructure. And then is, okay, hey, if there is growth, then you protect. Now, if there is nothing to protect, then you can have every possible discussion. And but look, I don't want to. The third is very important, but these are the two topics to really focus on.
So, my second set of questions is around companies. So, first countries, then companies. Now, companies are where AI is getting created, it's birthing.
Mhm,
Governments can only regulate
mhm,
or create some sort of an ecosystem, a
mhm,
friendly ecosystem within which finally companies
mhm.
operate. In fact, some of the best innovations in the world have come from companies, not from universities, not from think tanks, not
Yeah,
from government. They
yeah.
have come from companies, private companies. And when you say that you treat data as a source of value, not just input, it's a little confusing. Data is input, and how do you translate input into value?
Right.
Yeah, how would you, what is the transition there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, think of it as a refinery. You mentioned you worked in Reliance. So, think of it as a refinery, that there is crude oil, and then the crude oil goes through a refining process, and at each stage, um, the kind of the next stage, the value of that crude oil kind of enhances. Yeah. So similarly, there is that process with data, that data is the starting point. Yeah. And the next step is insights. Yeah. Which is, the insight could be descriptive, it describes the situation. It could be diagnostic, what happened. It could be predictive, that this is likely to happen. It could be prescriptive, do this. Yeah. That's the next stage, which is insights. The moment you kind of go from data to insights, the value of it is higher. Yeah. Now, insights to from insight, the next thing is action. You take some action. The action could be more tactical, short term actions. It could be longer term or more strategic actions. Yeah. That's the next stage. And then from the action is the final impact. The impact, from a company perspective, there are two main axes of it. The first is from a customer perspective, that for my customer, I'm changing the experience in some form. We've talked quite a bit about the Netflix and Amazon type of experiences. Or it is about internal, that the way I'm doing things, I'm increasing the efficiency of that. I'm doing some automation, yeah, which largely affects the cost side of the equation. You bring the two things together, which is the customer side and the operational side. You have a new business model, like a Uber or Airbnb. These are completely new business models, and you can argue that these are completely data driven business models. Yeah. So that's, a way of thinking about it. I call it, given I grew up as a consultant, I can't help but use acronyms or create acronyms, or DIAI: data, insights, action, impact. That's a way of maybe thinking about value creation from data. And the other point, which I make quite strongly, and I think one of the key pieces of research that I've done, is that today, that drop off, if you think of it as a funnel, like a refinery, there is a process. The final output is 0.01 to 0.4% of what you started with. So that's quite incredible. Yeah. So only
But that's creating a value that is more than the 99% over there.
it could, but it also points to the fact that today, that value creation process from data is highly inefficient. So companies, the world at large, hasn't yet. Data has exploded so much. You were talking about 90% of the data of the world has got created over the last 2 to 3 years. That it's not a well understood science, Gautam. Yeah. So today, the process of value creation or the process of conversion across that refinery funnel is extremely poor. Is extremely poor. For the data that you start with and the company, because at each stage the company is spending money, no? Because you're either spending money to store the data or you are processing the
So I
data.
would even argue that in this primitive stage of data analysis or data engagement,
Mhm.
some companies, data is becoming counterproductive for some companies.
Yes, of
The
course.
illiteracy with which random messages are sent to you day in and day out
Yes,
is causing, at least for me, and I'm sure millions of others,
right.
an irritation with the company that
Of course.
you're creating a negative image of that company, and we are just waiting, let's get somebody else. And the moment that somebody else comes, all this data deluge, all this data analysis, all this data exhaust will get over. And finally we are on to a new company where which will start do the same process all over again. Why aren't companies realizing this? I mean, I don't know if it's a problem in the US, but in India, random people calling you, random SMSs coming, you are on the D&D list, and yet nothing being able to. So partially it's a failure of regulation. But ठीक है, that's
No,
you can have your fight with the government separately, but companies have a self interest, bhai. They are looking for profits, they
companies
are looking
realize it,
for
Gautam.
company.
Companies realize it. They are not able to do it. So this whole thing is not so much about um, more data. It is about not being able to use the data properly. Okay.
So isn't sometimes just stepping back a better strategy for a company
Hmm.
rather than pushing your customer away? I mean, how are companies thinking this? Particularly, you mentioned banks as a tool where AI can happen. They're the worst offenders.
See what is happening. See, they realize it, Gautam. They realize it. But the problem is that today their translation. So there's a simple process that we talked about. That translating data into insights. Okay, we talked about descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and then into some actions. Yeah, it's failing. It is failing because
You speak from knowledge and information, or you speak from
no, I speak from deep experience.
okay,
This is what I,
your
my
clients,
this is what my company does, and this is what I see with my clients every day.
and
Every
what do you advise them?
see what I so what we advise them is that, look, of course you should. So this is called NBA. This is not the National Basketball Association. This is the next best action. Yeah, you have to be extremely selective about it. Yeah, and for that, the person, your recommender model has to be really high quality. Yeah. Now the challenge that is happening in recommender models is that companies are trying to cram in too much data into it. When it is too much data, your chances of that going haywire is very high. That's where the less is more point comes in, Gautam. Yeah.
Let me give you an example where, I mean, you should consult, and if you make some money, pass on some commission. You know, we keep getting messages, do this, that, and the other. Your last date is this, that, and the other. Blah blah blah. Failing which your contract will get cancelled, etc., etc. If you have paid, ignore. Okay. Now this message is coming to me on SMS. It's coming on email. You are the owner of this data. You know whether I have paid or not. You know who has paid
They
and
don't.
where.
They don't.
How is that possible? If so much data is there, why do they need me to check and then uncheck? This is a something that companies should be doing.
See, absolutely. So this is where we started our conversation about single source of truth, single customer view. Now, in a bank, yeah, this data is probably sitting in different places. Yeah, in different places. For them to get their data together is not easy. Okay. The older the bank, more are the legacy systems, more are the silos. Getting it together becomes a very, very big project. Yeah. And that is where this whole lesson more is also point comes in, because everyone, I can assure you, everyone will have some kind of a project of trying to get that data together across the different systems. Okay, they know it. They know it. Yeah, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Yeah, and the point I'm trying to make is that okay, instead of trying to get everything together, at least the key points as you were articulating. Yeah, at least let's get them together.
Basic hygiene, bhai.
Here, great is becoming the enemy of good in a very, very, very vicious way. Very vicious way. I'll give you another example. So I led, I was the chief operating officer of Flipkart in one of its most difficult years. Okay. And, we are facing this major war with Amazon. We were losing $1 billion of cash per annum. We were running out of cash. So, aur bhi gum hai zamane mein, right? And you won't believe it. Our number one problem as a company was that our FDP, Flipkart data platform, is not working. Can you believe it? And we had probably the best technical talent in the world. We had 20 IIT President Gold medalists. Okay, this was the biggest collection of IIT computer science geniuses that I think was ever brought together. और हमने कहा अच्छा हम डेटा प्लेटफॉर्म बनाएंगे जहाँ ई-कॉमर्स इज अ वेरी डेटा ड्रिवन बिजनेस या वेयर ऑल ऑफ दिस डेटा विल कम टुगेदर. वो बनाया, ये धुरंधरों ने बनाया, बट it just became so much, bringing all of that together, because just think about it. You're bringing so much data together. Each of those pipelines you have to check for quality now. That what we are saying, what do you think the data is in there? Is it actually there or not? Otherwise, it's garbage in, garbage out. It became impossible. It was a gridlock.
Any consulting firm or any company that can resolve this problem is a unicorn.
That's the company I'm trying to build.
Good luck.
That's the company I'm trying to build.
Good luck to you.
But it's not that easy.
Okay, so what does this mean? Be AI first.
Yeah.
Okay, collect data, I understand. Use AI, I understand. Be AI first. What does that mean?
See, what it means, Gautam, is that all the problems, whether it's customer problems or your internal problems, try to use AI to solve it. Yeah. So I'll take a very simple example of the software development. Yeah. Now, and this may actually hit our Indian IT industry, that the software development, we build code and then we are doing testing of that code. Yeah. So for the testing, use AI. Yeah. Because, for testing, you first define some test cases. That test cases can be generated by AI. The actual testing process is an iterative process. You check for many different combinations that can be better managed by AI. Yeah. I'm just taking a very small example, yeah, but that will give you a little bit of a perspective. So, and that's where, somewhere in the book I say that between digital data and AI, there's a very recursive relationship. AI is dependent on data, but everything to do with data can also be improved by AI. Yeah. So that's the point I'm trying to make, that every aspect of your activity, use AI first. Have this, taking it on a very different level for, for school children. Yeah. I was having this argument with my son's boarding school in the US. He goes to one of the top schools, and they have, this thing. Okay, don't use Chat GPT. And I was trying to argue with them. Arey Baba, you should be teaching them how to use Chat GPT. Because if I wrote this book. It's a big book, 3 years of research. And once I'd written the book, then I started to put some chapter headings into Chat GPT, data security. Tell me, what do you know about data security? And Chat GPT came up with a more comprehensive list of points that after 3 years of research I had. Of course, the book has my stories, and I've tried to write it in a certain way. It has some frameworks.
It's a very engaging book. I mean, I must tell you that.
Yeah, hopefully. But Chat GPT was more comprehensive. So the 3 years of research I had done, I really, really could have cut it down, Gautam, dramatically. And I'm really, I'm working on 2 or 3, books at this point. And I'm really, really trying to think through the method of writing the book. Because I know for sure that the method of writing that I used for my first 2 books is highly inefficient. It can be improved, by an order of magnitude using AI.
And then you say that in two separate places, basically you democratize access to data, but in the same breath you also say collaborate to win, right? You democratize data, I understand. Collaborations, I understand. But then aren't you giving away vital data when you collaborate with somebody who could walk away with it, use it to its own good, be a competitor, be part of industrial espionage or services espionage, etc. How does an entrepreneur engage with democratization and collaboration, both of which make his data so vulnerable to outside forces?
A great question, Gautam, and it goes back to the theme of the book, Mastering the Data Paradox. And this is another paradox, that democratization is a great opportunity with data today, and I'll explain that. But at the same time, there is a threat around security, data security, and also, with democratization also comes collaboration. But when there is collaboration, then it kind of goes against the notion of competing and kind of winning. Yeah. Uh, now, both are true, and we need to find a balance across these. Now, first, democratization is the very essence of data. See, data historically was a source of power. It was a source of power. Why? Because it was scarce. Now, data is abundant, data is overflowing. So, unless you are China or you are like 1984 George Orwell, you can't control it. Yeah, it's overflowing. So, why try? As well make it available across the organization so that it helps in decision making. It brings a very different level of awareness across the organization. It kind of helps build a very different level of organization culture.
But let's say, like, let we
Mm.
discussed Netflix data
Right.
earlier, and you have a very sharp profile of some person.
Mm.
Wouldn't a competing um, uh, wouldn't a competitor want access to that data? Now you're saying we'll share it and it's okay,
No,
or we'll
I'm
analyze it, and is that like how does this collaboration work? I mean, aren't you making companies vulnerable to espionage or to people just running away with your free data that you've
Yeah, no,
given?
no, it does not share everything. See, in any case, the democratization that I talk mostly about is within the enterprise. At least within your organization, share it. Yeah. Now, you may choose to share some or a lot with other players. Yeah. And the reason why kind of that makes sense is that, again, most of the data of the world, Gotham, today is open source. What used to be highly proprietary, most of that is now
So what
available.
would differentiate me from you if data is common? Is it my power to analyze it? Is it my power to find more and more layers of it and get this data to intersect with another set of data to create?
All of the above, all of the above. But most importantly, one of the aspects that I talk about is proprietary data. Okay. So in a world, which where mostly it is open source, yeah, this maybe it is less than 1%, maybe it is 0.1% of data, insights, models. It could be any of the things that you talked about, which is truly proprietary to use, is the real wealth. It's like, we just had lunch, so the dal, the salt in the dal is what gives the flavor. Yeah. The rest of the dal is substance. Yeah. Is the same thing. And therefore, this notion of proprietary data is extremely important. Yeah. Now, today, most enterprises don't fully understand that. And even when they do, that proprietary data is very tacit. It's tacit knowledge. It's not necessarily codified. And that's the case I'm making. That's the case I'm making, that you need to be very aware of that and deal with your proprietary knowledge and your rest of data, which may be 99% of your data, in very different ways.
Another thing that's on the last question on this theme is I see a lot of companies, both in India as well as abroad, which are trying to get an AI embed in any part of their business, any part of the organization. It could be supply chains, could be logistics, it could be operations, anything. And the rush for this, the gold rush here is an increase in the PE ratio and a rise in valuation. Oh yeah, so we are doing this, but we are also doing AI. How long do you think this is going to last?
Yeah, look, with any technology, there is a hype cycle, there is an irrational
Are we in
exuberance.
the hype cycle right now?
Of course we are. Of course we are, but the substance of this is very significant. Yeah. So normally, because I come more, I play at the intersection of business and technology, and my lens on technology tends to be a more of a business and outcome lens. So most times, when there have been fads over the last 20-25 years, I've been very skeptical. RPA happened, I was very skeptical. Blockchain, I saw the significance of it, but I was very skeptical about all this, Bitcoin and everything that happened. But this one, I don't mind the irrational exuberance. There is absolutely irrational exuberance. A lot of that is doesn't make sense. A lot of experiments are happening. In my world, in the business world, we call it an epidemic of POCs, proof of concepts. It's an epidemic. Most of them, people, there is a POC fatigue. So there is too much happening. There is just, everybody's trying to be on the AI bandwagon. Yeah. So of
So
course,
who's making the money in all this?
look,
Like in Gold Rush, the guys who made the spades made the money.
yeah, I think right now Nvidia has made the money.
The chip makers.
The chip makers are making the money. Consultants like us are making the money. So
Good for you then.
yeah, it is good. It's good. And we chose our space very carefully. And we were earlier talking about it. That there is the chips, there is the LLMs. I think for a lot of companies, especially based out of India, all of that helping companies build AI on top of all of the foundations itself, there is a lot of money to be made. Yeah. So look,
That's what you're talking about when you say entrepreneurs. We need millions of entrepreneurs come.
exactly,
That
to
will
do that,
to
to
do
do
that.
that, because and you can do it in a services model. You can also do it in a product model where you have built deep understanding of specific industries, customer problems, and building solutions there.
Okay, thanks. So this is the last leg of my questions. I told you I had only 3 questions, but I think we've run through about 300. um, you say that for individuals, so we've done countries, we've done companies. Now I come to
Mm.
citizens that don't avoid this technology wave. It's a wave whose time has come. Uh, make it your friend, embrace it. That's what you're suggesting. For people who don't even know the beginning of AI, right? They're doing their day jobs on various things. Somebody is a shopkeeper, somebody is working in a steel plant. How does at an individual level, at a corporate level, I understand, at a national level, I do. How does at an individual level, how will embracing AI, other than coding, help me win in the AI age?
See, the most important point about AI is that don't focus on the technology and the coding part of it. That is actually not the part to focus on. Focus on using AI. Focus on the consumption of AI.
So
So,
beyond chat GPT, what do I
so,
consume?
so just as an example, now one of the most today celebrated stories around India, our Prime Minister keeps on talking about it, is the UPI. That even like a vendor in a forget town, but even in a village, is using Paytm or Phone Pay, yeah, for accepting payments. Yeah, that's a modern form of technology, isn't it? Now there are, over the next 12-18 months, there will be hundreds more such applications, Gautam. Okay, it will happen in health, it will happen in finance, it will happen in agriculture. I think given our country, our economy, I think there is a revolution that will happen in agri-tech. Agriculture, you would agree, is a very data driven business, isn't it?
Multi-layered, multi kinds of data, weather, soil. Uh,
And there is a lot that's happening in terms of startups there, who already, there are apps out there, which help you in your sewing patterns and so on and so forth, and there will be a lot there. Yeah. So, it is to take this fear away. It is to take exactly this thing away, that this is, for some haves, have nots. This is, for somebody else. This is very complicated. Array, everybody's using UPI now. What great education does that need? Today, going forward, I would think in 24 months, there will be an app for each farmer. Okay. We have like 800, 900 million cell phones in this country. Yes. And now, so our farmers have it. Yeah. Our farmers have it. And, tomorrow the apps will be there, and they should be using that. So that's what I mean when I say AI first. Yeah.
Uh, my last question is, when you say less is more, how do I negotiate this as an individual? Data is coming at me at the speed of light on every app, on every TV, or whatever I do. Either I am receiving or I'm giving data. What do you mean by less is more?
Yeah, no,
Should I consume less social media, for instance?
absolutely. Be more selective. Yeah, we saw that with data, that the data deluge is in itself the problem. Banks or telcos or all type of enterprises, they have too much data, and that's the struggle they have, and they're trying to consume everything, and that is not happening. That's where you get all those silly messages. Yeah, they're not able to process it. Yeah, so if they were to do less, they will be able to get more out of it. Now the same is true for us as individuals, but very difficult to do. Yeah. And that's where, I also go to, spirituality. Because the only way, see, the nature of digital and data is such that the once you get into it, it sucks you in, and you end up consuming more. Yeah, that, I can't avoid my mobile phone. We were having lunch, but I spent 10 minutes looking at my mobile phone. Yeah. If I'm on Twitter, I can't avoid it. Yeah. So it gets you more and more into it. The only way, at least I have found, and there are maybe different ways to deal with it. I've seen that, when I sit in meditation and I'm trying to just, even if 20, 30 minutes kind of, go inside myself, I have more clarity. And when I have clarity, I am seeking less. Yeah, I kind of then have a more intuitive sense of, this is what I want to do, and for that, this is, what is needed. Yeah. So that's my method.
So
Yeah.
basically, it's like a lifeboat. You're swimming in the ocean of data, and your lifeboat, you just look around here and then make sure there's no sharks there, or maybe there's a land ahead, etc., etc. So you reduce your consumption of data, and
Be more specific about it, be more targeted about it. Yeah. You can't avoid data, and you should not. So I am absolutely making
so
a,
again, that balance that you were talking
yeah,
about
so
earlier.
don't be a data hermit. Yeah. Because you can't get the benefit of a data first world without data sharing, without engaging. So you have to engage, but it very quickly, and the nature of this technology, that's the bad part of the technology. The nature of it is that it will suck you in, it will get you to a overconsumption, and that's where, you need to have your own methods, how you bring that discipline of less is more.
A decade ago, there was a talk about individuals who are producing their data will be able to monetize the data that they are producing in some ways. And the companies that are using that data and making money would share a part of that, their revenues or whatever, their profits. There was this debate. You must have uh,
Yeah.
gone through it. That debate seems to have died. You think with AI it can be revived again?
See, the debate,
How do I monetize my data?
see, it is, you need a certain scale for doing that. Over the last 10 years, we have seen an entire industry of influencers come up. That's what influencers are doing. No? You and I are tweeting, and but there are some, who have been able to generate a certain traffic and an audience where they are monetizing that, isn't it? even over the last 3-4 years post COVID, there is an entire slew of influencers, social media influencers who have come up on different platforms. Somebody's on YouTube, somebody's on Instagram, and so on. So that is happening. The monetization is
What I
happening.
understood was that if it's my data, I get to monetize a part of it. I think that debate has ended somewhere. Perhaps it's big tech, perhaps it's inability of governments to regulate, and how do you track which company is making money when everything is free?
It also
You know,
fundamentally goes to this question of who owns the data.
yeah. So if I own my data,
That has been conveniently put in bit of a certain sense of ambiguity.
yeah. So perhaps then from the individual we go back to the nation. Then is there space for some regulatory or government intervention to ensure?
See, there is certainly that debate which is needed on privacy. Okay, we talked about it, and it absolutely that debate connects the individual and the company and the kind of the national level. It connects all three. Now, when a company is offering you a service, a social media as a service, there is no free lunch in life, is there? When they're offering you something, why will they not also benefit from it? Yeah. But at the same time, there has to be certain boundaries to that. Yeah. So I am okay with the notion that if I am getting a service, by unhone service bhi di, okay, then you are saying, oh, I will monetize it for myself. Then what is the company is investing billions of dollars in setting up this technology infrastructure, cloud platform, blah blah blah. How are they going to make money? So that also has to work. Yeah. But okay, what are the limits to that? That what data can be, uh, you know, can they use? What data is not appropriate to use? I think that's the debate that needs to happen. I am not against them making money. If they're not making money, this whole ecosystem will not be able to work.
Yeah. Thank you, Nitin. It's been a very good conversation. I didn't expect this conversation when we began then, but I think at least I emerge far more um, informed and educated. And with these new perspectives that you're talking about, and the way data is multiplying, and you said in the last 2 years, 90% of the data has been created. Perhaps in the next 2 years, that statistic will move further.
Yes.
And if everything is data, then I think we do need to have a different worldview of how we situate ourselves in this crossfire of government, individual companies, innovation, technology. Suddenly, it's like a new world. We are almost creating a new world here with data. Thank you, Nitin.
No, thank you.
Pleasure to have you at Observer Research
No, thank you,
Foundation.
Gautam. Really enjoyed the conversation. Your line of questioning was brilliant. I think it forced me to also reflect a lot, and it was fantastic. I'll just leave. My overall theme is that, look, let's approach this with a prism of unbelievable opportunity, especially for India. Yeah, the overall prism is this is about your line. Growth is good. Yeah, that this whole collision of data and AI will create a new world. We don't know the full contours of it. Yeah, but it will create a lot of opportunities. It also create challenges, and we in India have a great opportunity of kind of riding that wave.
Thank you, Nitin.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back very soon.